My iPad just died. Where are we?
You gotta be kidding me.
Before GPS, tablets, moving maps, and all the modern glass cockpit tech we're spoiled with today, pilots still flew long distances with complete confidence. They weren't guessing, they weren't relying on luck, and they definitely weren't hoping the airplane would magically end up somewhere familiar. They used a handful of simple navigation tools, some visual, some based on radios, some purely mathematical, and those skills still matter today. So let's break down exactly how pilots know where they are without GPS, and why these old-school methods are still incredibly useful, even in 2025. The first and most basic technique is pilotage, and it's exactly what it sounds like, looking out the window and matching what you see to what's on the chart. Roads, lakes, rivers, water towers, wind farms, bridges, railroad tracks, cities, coastlines, they're all giant reference points. If you see a big lake off your left wing and a town straight ahead, you look at the sectional, find that shape, and boom, you know where you are. What people don't realize is how much you can piece together visually. The angle a road meets a river, the direction of a shoreline, the spacing between towns. Those little details combine into a picture, and once the picture matches the chart, your position becomes obvious. Pilotage is low-tech, it's simple, and in a lot of ways, it's still the most intuitive way to navigate. Then there's dead reckoning, which sounds like something out of a pirate movie, but is really just predicting where you'll be based on heading, time, and speed. If you take off, fly a heading of 90 at 100 knots for 30 minutes, you know exactly how far east you should be. Add a wind correction angle and the math becomes surprisingly accurate. Dead reckoning is basically telling the airplane, here, where we're going, here's how fast we're going, and here's how long we're going to go there. You use a compass, an airspeed indicator, and a clock, that's it. And even though we have GPS now, dead reckoning builds a skill most new pilots struggle with today: situational awareness. It forces you to mentally track your progress instead of staring at a magenta line. Next, we step into the radio navigation world, starting with VORs, easily one of the most important pieces of aviation infrastructure ever built. A VOR is a ground-based radio station that sends out 360 radials, like spokes on a wheel. When you tune a VOR on your nav radio, your indicator shows you which radial you're on. If it says you're on the 180 radial, that means you are directly south of the station. If you fly toward the station on the 360 radial, you're flying northbound to it. Combine two VORs, for example. Fly the 90 radial from one station until it intersects with the 180 radial from another, and you get a perfect pinpoint of your location. Before GPS, airliners flew coast to coast this way. Military pilots trained on it. General aviation pilots still use it today. It's reliable, it works even when the fancy screens go blank, and every student should understand it. Then you have NDBs, or non-directional beacons. They're older, less precise, and slowly being phased out, but they still deserve mention. An NDB doesn't give you radials. Instead, it simply tells your airplane, the station is that way. The needle points toward the beacon like a compass arrow. You can home to it, track away from it, or use it as a reference for approaches. They're simple, primitive, and honestly still a great backup tool. Now here's the part people forget. Even today's super-modern air traffic system is built on these older methods. Airways, those blue lines and Victor routes you see on charts, were originally designed around VOR radials. Intersections in the sky were created by crossing radials. Even some instrument approaches today still reference VOR bearings. GPS didn't replace the system, it layered on top of it. Let's also talk about something every pilot has but almost nobody practices with: the magnetic compass. That little instrument is the ultimate backup. No power, still works. Avionics failure, still works. Total electrical failure, still works. If everything died and you needed to fly a heading for 30 miles to reach a known city or an airport with lights, that magnetic compass becomes your best friend. It's simple, but in an emergency, it's gold. But the real secret behind all this, the reason pilots don't get lost even without GPS: redundancy and cross-checking. A good pilot never relies on one single method. If pilotage and dead reckoning agree, that's confidence. If your VOR radial matches what you see out the window, that's confirmation. If the compass heading matches your nav radio and your mental picture, now you're rock solid. The more references you combine, the harder it becomes to actually lose track of where you are. And here, why this all still matters today. Technology makes flying easier, but it also makes pilots mentally lazy if they never practice anything else. Knowing how to navigate without GPS makes you more aware, more accurate, and honestly a lot more confident in your flying. Try this sometime. During a VFR flight, turn off the moving map for a few minutes. Pick a lake or a town. Use your heading and time to estimate where you are. Tune a VOR to confirm. Then turn the map back on and see if you nailed it. When everything lines up, that's when you feel like you're actually in control of the airplane, not just watching a screen. These old-school methods aren't outdated, they're fundamental. They're the backup behind every modern system we use today, and they're the reason pilots could fly long before satellites existed. When you understand pilotage, dead reckoning, VORs, and the compass, you can navigate almost anywhere, even if every piece of digital avionics went dark. And that's the real point. GPS is a tool. Navigation is a skill.